Manx Radio Sport.
A very good evening on this beautiful warm night on the Isle of Man, and welcome to Friday Sport Preview on Manx Radio. I'm Rob Pritchard with you once again until 6:30 to take a look at the sporting action coming up this weekend. So, coming up tonight, Week 2 beckons for the new Manx football season. Can the opening day pace setters keep up the pace as we enter the next selection of fixtures? In rugby, after a narrow defeat last weekend in their opening game, Douglas are looking to make amends on their travels in the Regional 2 Northwest tomorrow. And it's finally arrived. The Manx hockey season roars back into life on Saturday, with the mixed leagues returning to the field. That is all to come this evening. The sun sets on a beautiful day here on the Isle of Man. Hopefully that sunrise will be making its way over the next set of Manx football fixtures tomorrow afternoon. It is week 2 of the 23-24 season. The early pace setters have set the early benchmarks across the divisions. Now it's time to see, can they keep it up, or can anyone else spring a surprise? Well, naturally, we will be joined in just a couple of moments by the man who knows all that's going on this weekend. So let's bring him in. Tony Mepham, very good evening to you.
Good evening to you, Rob, and terrific sunshine today, and just hopefully it's a little bit cooler tomorrow, because to play in that heat today, tomorrow is going to be cruel, but great weather, so let's enjoy it.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive straight into it, shall we? Let's have a look through the fixtures from the Canada Life Men's Premier League all the way down to Combination 2, all but one of the games kicking off at 2:30pm tomorrow. Let's start in the Canada Life Men's Premier League. On top of the list here is the team that really did set an early statement last weekend. Laxey, 7-0 winners away at Moran on the opening day, and tipped by a fair few to be in the hunt for the league title later on in the season. They are at Glen Road. They're home for the first time this season tomorrow, and they'll be hosting Union Mills.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about Laxey at the moment. I believe there's one or two of the sort of dream players missing tomorrow, so we'll see how that affects them. But great result last week, and you know, Tom Creer, we know what he's capable of, and 4 goals from him. And when you look at the players around him supplying him, you can understand why a lot of people are looking at them to win this league. But certainly Union Mills, this time last year they were in a good position, and even though they lost last week, I'm pretty certain Paul Guyver and the team there will be looking for a little bit more from the players, but it's going to be really tough. And Glen Road, I think, will be buzzing tomorrow afternoon, and I'm going to go for Laxey to take the result.
Very well, and then we move out toward the Douglas area, and two sides that had contrasting opening weekends, and some are thinking maybe on different trajectories going into this season. Braddon, newly promoted this season, got a 3-2 win away at Douglas Royal last weekend. They're going to be on home soil as well for the first time this campaign, and they're up against a side that had a very difficult start against Laxey last weekend. Braddon, they're going to be hosting Moran.
Yeah, and I think Braddon know it's a quite important game, even though it's only the second game of the season, because these two teams expected to find it a little bit difficult in the Premier League this season. But Braddon, great result last week. I think that's a bonus 3 points for them. And they've got a very young team, Rob, so they're only going to get better. We saw that last week with the young players coming through. Thomas Healy, also Dan Kinraid getting the goals. So, you know, it's going to be really difficult for them around, and I feel sorry for them a little bit, because when you lost the quality that they have done for the start of this season's campaign, then it's going to be difficult for David Brew and Keir Morris to pick points up at the moment. But you never know. They do surprise us. But tomorrow afternoon, I think it will be Braddon at home will take the victory.
Very well, and then a short distance away on Glen Crutchley Road, St George's, and we talked last week ahead of the new season how player recruitment has been a massive job for the club going into this season. They're coming up against a side who themselves have lost a couple of players over the summer as well, so it'll be interesting to see how these two fare when they come up against each other at Glen Crutchley Road. St George's, they'll take on Douglas Royal.
Yeah, it will, and I think certainly St George will take something from last week's game. I know they lost, but from what I'm hearing, they're a pretty good side. There's still a lot of good players in there, and they just couldn't quite get it together. I know they didn't get a lot of pre-season under their belt, so that's affected them a little bit. But Douglas Royal will be, I think, smarting about that result last week where they lost to Braddon, and Michael Fitzmaurice will be hoping that his boys can correct that. And against St George's, depending on their starting lineup, I haven't seen it yet, but Johnny Myers will be hoping that he's got enough strength there to get a valued 3 points on them, because they're going to struggle towards the bottom, I think. I'm going to go for St George's just to sneak it.
Well, elsewhere at Ballafletcher, it'll be a meeting of two sides. It's a bit of a sort of battle of last year's titans, really, at Ballafletcher. Corinthians, Railway Cup and FA Cup winners in the last campaign. They'll come up against the defending Premier League champions, Peel. This has the hallmarks of a great game, it seems, Tony.
Well, it sure did. We spoke about it last week, didn't we, after we saw the results come in. And, Corinthians to beat Russian 6-1, that takes some doing. And again, a lot of good young players who have come through. I've seen the squad for tomorrow. They're back in again as well, and deservedly so as well. They might only be 16 years of age, but they proved last week that they can mix it with the big boys. Russian are a very good side. And when you're coming across Peel also, who have got a lot of good quality young players in there, then Dan Bell will be just hoping that they can get 3 points from this big fixture. Because it always is, when these two meet, it's always a real tough battle. And I don't expect tomorrow to be any different. Hopefully I'm going to be covering this game after I finish work on time, Rob. But I'm going to go for a draw in this one. I just think they'll be evenly matched in tomorrow afternoon's fixture.
Looking forward to it. Well, there is one early kick-off this weekend, and it also comes in the Premier League, and it is St Mary's. Boy, did they make a statement as the newly promoted Division 2 champions last weekend with a 6-0 win at St John's United. Well, they're going to be on home soil for the first time this weekend, and they're up against a side who shipped 6 goals last weekend in the 1:45pm kick-off. St Mary's host Russian United.
I was really impressed with St Mary's last week. I watched the whole game. Absolutely fantastic. And Adam Adibayi, he's a real tough player to play against. I've watched him before, but it was just something about it last week, whether they've changed him around a little bit, because I've always known him to play a little bit more sort of midfield defensively, but he was right in that centre and absolutely tremendous. And with no Owen Canepa in there as well, then it just shows that they've got two real top marksmen. But Russian, Andrew Moody's team will be really disappointed with the way it went. They took the lead. And then, I'm not saying they caved in, but it all went wrong for them. They'll be looking to get that one right. But I just think St Mary's, from what I saw last week, are a team to think about because they looked really good last week against St John's when they beat them 6-0.
And just a reminder again, that is the early kick-off tomorrow, 1:45pm over at the Bowl. And the last game in the Men's Premier League this weekend sees Ayr United, who didn't have a game last weekend, so this is their first foray into the new season at home up at Andreas Playing Fields. And they're going to be coming up against St John's United and Ayr United, Tony. Some people talking about them potentially pushing toward the top again this year as well.
And I would totally agree with it. Sean Kelly, who, if you remember 2 years ago, won the double Player of the Year, the Football Writers and the Rose Bowl trophy, and deservedly so. He was immense, and there was big long throws. When I look at other players who've come back in as well, I think Christian Penswick, his injury that he's had, his knee or his ankle, has sorted itself out, so he's in there. And when you look at Nathan Tier, the goalkeeper, really good, and there's other players who are coming back as well. Danny Oram will always score goals. He's a good diversion to keep people away from Sean Kelly. And Chris Duggan as well, a really good player they signed from Ramsey. And from what I'm hearing, St John's are really low on numbers tomorrow. And I don't know if you've picked up, Rob, the combination game has been cancelled tomorrow, St John's against Ayr, because St John's can't field a team. So it just shows you how depleted they are. I know Will Penholrick's not available. I think Sam Ingham's going to sit this one out because he's injured. So when you're losing your two centre-backs, it's going to be a tough afternoon. And that's why I'm going to go for Ayr to take the result.
Very well. Well, let's take a look for the next couple of minutes over the other divisions, starting with DPS Limited Division 2. 5 games there, and Onken setting the early marker down in the first game. An 8-2 win away at Pulrose. Onken relegated, of course, last season. Castletown as well, getting themselves a big victory as well. So Onken and Castletown in there with games this weekend, and other teams besides.
Yeah, it is. And look at Onken and D&D. D&D, I've noticed one or two of their signings this year are sort of 18, 19, so that's good. That brings the average age down a little bit. But Adam McCulloch, who's just signed for Onken, terrific display by him. He's a good goal scorer. He got 4 of the goals, so I'm going to go for Onken to beat Douglas and District. Castletown against Pulrose. Castletown really did explain that their main business this season. And when you look at the players that they've got there, then I can't see them losing this one against Pulrose. Colby against Jims. You have to go for Colby. Sneaked the result last week, but against Jims, I think they've got a little bit more strength back in that team, so they should be able to get the points away from Jims. Michael against Ramsey Youth Centre. Michael will be really disappointed 7 days ago, so they'll be looking to correct that. So we'll go for Michael to win. and Governors come in for their first game of the season. They sat it out last week, their free week against Foxdale. Unknown quantity. We don't really know how strong they are, so I'll have to sit on the fence this one, play safe, and say that Foxdale are just going to win it.
Very well. We've got around 2 minutes left before we move on, so let's take a quick look through the combination divisions. And we now, as you have just mentioned, 4 games in Canada Live Combination 1 tomorrow, with that St John's United versus Ayr United game now called off.
Yeah, Uni Mills against Laxey. Laxey, terrific result last week, but Laxey, I think, might just have 1 or 2 players taken away from them to fill the spaces that has been left in the first team. Uni Mills, they've got good young players there, but again, they've just got to sort it all out to put a push on, so go for Laxey. Moran against Braddon. I think Moran will find it tough because, again, there's a good crop of young players coming through for Braddon, so Braddon to win. Peel against Corinthians. Corinthians are looking quite strong. They had a good performance last week against Russian, only just losing. And Russian, if you remember, went all season last year undefeated. So against Peel, going to be a tough battle. Draw, I think, there. Russian against St Mary's. St Mary's won last week. Russian won as well. Go for Russian to win. And St John's against Ayr, as we've just said, has been postponed.
And last but certainly not least, on Saturday, we have 5 fixtures in DPS Limited Combination 2.
Yeah, Douglas and District against Onken. I think Onken will just take that one. Old Boys, good result for them last week. And against Douglas Athletic, who had a cracking result as well. So I don't know where this one's going to go, because both of them, I think, scored the same amount of goals last week. So could be an entertaining game. I'm going to go for Old Boys just to win it. Jim's against Colby. You'd expect Colby to take victory there. Ramsey Youth Centre against Michael. Ramsey Youth Centre always have a strong Combi 2 side, so I'm going to go for them. And Foxdale against Governors Athletic. Can Governors do it? Not 100% on this one. I'll just go for Foxdale to win that one as well.
Well, Tony Mepham, thank you very much as always, and we'll be catching up with you tomorrow afternoon. And just a reminder, there are 2 games on Sunday as well in the Masters football, which starts this weekend. Ayr United versus Colby, that is a 2:10 kickoff. And also on Sunday, Onken versus Peel, that is a 3:40 kickoff. So the Masters football starting as well this weekend. OK, let's move things on and now turn to rugby. And after a narrow defeat in their opening game of the season last weekend, Douglas are heading out on their travels, hoping to get some valuable points on the board. Elsewhere this weekend, ahead of the domestic rugby season in the coming weeks, there'll be a friendly being held in the south of the island to give players from numerous clubs some valuable game time as part of their preparations. With the lowdown on the rugby action this weekend, as ever, here is Dave Christian.
Starting off with Douglas, Rob, it's Regional 2 Northwest. They're on the road to Kirby Lonsdale. They've never played them before in the league. Kirby Lonsdale been in predominantly in a Cumbria league, but they've had a bit of a disaster, is probably the best way to describe it, last season. Occasionally you see this. It's not a new phenomena, but a club will suddenly have a number of its core players disappear and they go into a free fall. And Kirby Lonsdale last season conceded an average of 73 points in every game they played. Not surprisingly, they finished bottom of the table with no wins from 22 matches. They were relegated, come down into the league Douglas are in. We've seen that Kirby Lonsdale got a bit of a shoe-in last week away at Crewe and Nantwich, 46-12 I think the score was there. So based on last season's performance, that's an improvement for Kirby Lonsdale. However, it's too early to tell whether or not they're going to stabilise at this level in Regional 2 Northwest, or whether they'll continue to fall down and go down perhaps another league. So that makes it kind of a positive thing for Douglas. They're going away. It's their first away game of the season. They lost narrowly at home last week, but played reasonably well and perhaps arguably should have won the game. As usual, though, there's some changes to the squad, and that's probably where the meat is going to be for Douglas. Simon Hoddenott, captain, continues in the front row with John Dutnell, Chris Boll and Connor Garland. The front 4 unchanged, but Rob Todd is now going to come in off the bench. He's going to start in the second row. Back row remains as it was. Cal Dentith, Percy Hampton and Blake Snell. Carl Martin, Luke Highland unchanged at half-back, but in the back line there are more changes. Guy Barons comes in on the wing. Lucas Simmons, who was with Vagabonds, he comes in at first centre. And Shay Waterworth gets a start. He was on the bench last week. And 2 new faces on the bench this week, Angus Wheeler and Harry Swain. And Wilfie Kermode gets a start on the bench rather than on the field last week. He was on the wing. He's replaced by Guy Barons. So Douglas ringing the changes after last week. Some of that is going to be injury related. We know Max Fairbairn took a knock to the knee early on in that game last week against Furwood Waterloo. So he's going to be replaced in the centre, and we'll see how Lucas Simmons goes. He was reasonably competent at Vagabonds, can kick as well, so that'll give them options in place of Jack Shimon, who was unable to make the trip. That should give them some kicking options. And of course, Luke Highland is there with the boot at 10 as well. Thinking positively going into the game is probably the best way to do this. Kirby Lonsdale on the way down, Douglas potentially with a chance to pick up some points on the road. They've made a few changes to the team. That should be enough to tweak it. And fingers crossed that they can come back with 5 points come Saturday tea time. That game up at Kirby Lonsdale, no kick-off time as yet for that, but it's likely to be determined by their travelling times. Domestically, it's been a little bit of a trial and tribulation this week. Southern Nomads were due to play Western Vikings this week in a friendly fixture to get them ready for their Cheshire Plate appearance in the first weekend in October. That didn't happen either. Western Vikings unable to put the team together for that game, so we're going to actually see Southern Nomads play an Isle of Man Barbarians game. Kickoffs down there at Ballakillia Park, 2:15. The Barbarians team will be made up of players from all the other clubs. I know Ramsey have got 18 or 19 going down, so predominantly Ramsey, but I know there's a couple of players from Douglas going to get involved and a couple of Western Vikings too. So that should be a little warm-up there for Southern Nomads.
Manx Radio Sport.
And finally tonight it's time for the Manx hockey season to spring back into life, as this Saturday marks the start of the latest Manx Hockey Mixed Leagues. A whole flurry of fixtures will kick off the campaign from the Premier League down to the Under-15s League from tomorrow morning and through Saturday afternoon. So who will make the early impressions? Who face a tough start to the season? Well, I caught up this week with our hockey correspondent, Ben Cunningham. We'll start with the Mixed Premier League. 4 games this weekend, and we'll start with one of the early pushbacks, 12:35 at the NSC, and it is Vikings A against Backers B.
Yeah, Vikings A will definitely be looking to get a good start this season and definitely be in the fight for the title of the Premier League. Backers B, they'll be hoping that they can avoid being in the relegation battle. It'll be a close game, this. Vikings did have an up and down season last season, but I think Vikings A will just come out on top on this one.
The other 12:35 pushback out in the west at QE2, and it is Valkyries A, and they'll be hosting arguably one of the surprise packages of last season, Castletown Celts.
Yeah, and what were we saying last season? Don't rule out a Castletown team, and in every league, Castletown team proved us wrong. So I think Castletown could be a surprise package. If we look back at last season, their ladies team pulled off the league title there in the Ladies Premier League, first time in 30 years and that. So definitely Castletown as a whole will be on a high. Valkyries, though, will definitely be looking to make sure that they can make amends of their season last year. They had a pretty up and down season, but I think Castletown will get this one, you know.
And then over at the NSC this time at 2:05, Harlequins A, and they've got a really tough task on their hands going into the opening day. They're up against the mixed title holders, Backers A.
Yeah, Harlequins A, welcome to the Premier League, and your first game is against the reigning champions, Backers A. Harlequins will definitely be looking to make a statement to prove that, you know, they're in this Premier League and to stay up in the Premier League, but Backers A, I think, will give them a taste of what's to come, and not in a harsh way, but I think Backers A will show them that this is the Premier League.
And the other mixed Premier League game taking place at 2:05 is up in the north of the island at Ramsey Grammar School. Ramsey A against Vikings B. Seems on paper a difficult one to call, this one.
Yeah, this one I think will be a very close game. Ramsey have lost a few players over the course of the summer, going away to uni and that. Vikings B, though, Vikings do have quite a few teams this season, as we'll find out going through all these leagues. Yeah, I think this one will be hard to call. It could be a stalemate, this one.
Right, let's have a quick look through the other divisions on this opening weekend. We'll start off with Mixed Division 1 to come next, and there's 3 games there this weekend.
Yeah, so the first game in Mixed Division 1 is Castletown Camags against Valkyries B. I'm going to go for a Valkyries B win on that one. Second game is Backers C against Vikings C, and that's at 2:05 at Castle Rushen High School. I'm going to go for a Vikings C win there. And then the final game is Valkyries C against Castletown Southerners, 2:05 at QE2. I'm going to go for a Castletown Southerners win there.
Mixed Division 2 then, and there are 3 games there this weekend.
Yep, and the first game in this league is 11:05 at Castle Rushen High School, and this is Castletown Cushags against Ramsey Ravens. This will be a close game, I reckon. Ramsey Ravens did have a good season last season. I think Ramsey might surprise Castletown here. But then, first game of the season, who knows what could happen. Second game in this league is at 12:35 at Castle Rushen High School, and this is Vikings D against Backers Colts. Backers Colts promoted up to this league from Division 3 last year, so it'll be interesting to see how they fare in this league. But Vikings D were strong last season, and they did beat their C team last season, so who knows what could happen. And then the final game is Valkyries D against Vikings E, and this is at 3:35 at QE2. Valkyries D, a strong team, but also Vikings E will be full of youth and experience. So hard one to call this one, possibly a stalemate there.
We have 3 games in Mixed Division 3, including an intra-club derby.
Yeah, first intra-club derby in this whole entire season is in Mixed Division 3, and we'll come to that one near the end. So the first game in this league is at 12:35 at Ramsey Grammar, and that sees Ramsey Rookies against Castletown Carracks. It'll be interesting to see how the two teams fare in this game. Second game is Backers D against Castletown Cosney, 2:05 at King William's College. And then, as you said, Rob, 3:35 at the NSC is Harlequins B against Harlequins C.
We have 2 games in the Mixed Under-15s division, which also gets underway.
Yep, this league also kicks off this weekend, and it's great to see so many youth teams in this league this season. I think we've got 8 in this league, so it's great to see. Just 2 fixtures this weekend, and that's Harlequins against Vikings, 11:05 at the NSC, and Ramsey Rogues and Rascals against Valkyries at 3:35 at Ramsey Grammar School.
Manx Radio Sport.
So we have time for on Friday Sport Preview this week. Many thanks to my guests this week, Tony Mepham, Dave Christian and Ben Cunningham. And just a final reminder, FC Isle of Man, after 6 games on the road, they're back at the Bowl this weekend in the NWCFL Premier Division when they host Prestwich Hayes. And if you're not heading down to the Bowl for the game, as ever, we at Manx Radio have got you covered. Full live match commentary on Manx Radio, DAB and AM 1368 from myself and my co-commentator Sam Palmer from 6 o'clock tomorrow night. We'd love to have you join us. That's all we have time for, so have a wonderful Friday evening and have a wonderful weekend as well. Chris Kinley is here with you next, but from me until next time, it's bye for now.
Manx Radio.